I'm here with Jake from Canberra Electric Bikes, and we just wanted to have a bit of a chat about e-bikes.
Cool. You're in the right place.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, Jake, tell me, who's buying your e-bikes at the moment?
Well, it's a very broad demographic. I would say people from all walks of life are buying e-bikes. There's a bit of a skew towards people who are already bike riders. Mm-hmm. A little bit of a baby boomer demographic there. But to be honest, the mountain biking scene is growing really fast in electric, and that's obviously ages from 20 up. Probably, I would guess, 60% women, 40% men. And yeah. And look, there's so many types. You know, we've got folding, mountain, trikes, step over, step through. So there's really something for everybody. But we don't specifically target a particular, audience or a demographic because it's pretty broad.
Yeah, and we were having a little bit of a chat beforehand about some of the different ways people can use e-bikes. Do you think they've got a part in Canberra's transport?
Oh, absolutely. I think anywhere, if you have e-bikes, that's going to be a solution in any city in the world because, with cars, obviously they have a place, but they take up so much space and the infrastructure for them is so big that what you can produce and the amount of people you can move on the footprint of a bicycle is phenomenal. But obviously for a lot of people, a bike involves sweat, exercise, etc. Well, e-bikes allow a bit of the best of both worlds because most of them you do still pedal, you're still riding, you're still getting exercise and health benefits, so you don't need your gym membership anymore. But you can use it as your primary form of transport like you currently use a car. So it's like, win-win-win.
Yeah, I've got to say, I did borrow one for a week and it was glorious because I would ride in my work clothes and arrive where I got to and I didn't need a shower and it just really worked, I think. Are you finding a lot of people having that sort of experience?
So a lot of people assume that e-bikes possibly are lazy, although that whole misconception's really disappeared a lot in the last couple of years. Because when you actually ride one, you realise, oh, I see, you're still pedaling, you're still riding. So yes, on a big hill, you'll get assistance. You're not getting the same full aerobic workout. But I mean, what aerobic workout are you getting sitting in a car? That's the lazy thing. Like every person going past in a car, lazy, right? So on a bike, what happens on e-bikes is people nearly always use it a lot more. So instead of it being like a weekend ride, they might start riding it every day. And the distances they go are phenomenal. They never thought they could ride 10, 20, 30 Ks in a day. And suddenly those kilometres are very realistic. So that's why it's such a different form of transport.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you've got a few bikes that you've shown us in the background here.
Yeah.
And there's a really big range here. We've got the folding bike. That's one that can go on a train or the tram.
That fits on a train. You're allowed to bring that on a train because it's small enough and it's like a bag, basically.
Yeah, genius. And then we've got a couple of cargo bikes, which is really good for luggage and kids and
cargo
gear,
bikes are great for kids. Also carrying stuff. I mean, long term, there's a big transition for food delivery, obviously, and even for freight companies, end at last mile kind of stuff is going to be huge. It's not quite there yet, but that kind of turn cargo bike there, that's good for one or two kids on the back. Now, that's one of the common reasons people will say, oh, well, a bike's not going to work for me. I've got kids, I've got to drop kids off at school, I've got to go to sports. Like, well, no, there's a solution for that too. And then there's a more traditional A-frame. But, we categorize the shop into styles of bikes. And definitely cargo is a growing market, like exponentially, because it offers something that other bikes just don't do. But yeah, the biggest problem we have is so much choice that how do you help people make a decision, And we do our best to discuss it with, when someone comes in, work out what they're looking for. And then it's all about getting on and trying them. You've got to physically ride them. Looking at them or a website's never going to work. So.
Yeah, I think that. And what's the price range on all these different bikes?
Start at $1,500. So our cheapest bike would be $1,500. You can certainly find bikes from $700 to $1,500 online, but there's nearly always a reason for that. It's nearly always a box sent from a warehouse. There's no real backup and support. And all the components, especially the battery cells and the motor gear sets, they're all cheap. They have to be cheap to make it that price. So for someone using it regularly, without a doubt, the cheap pay twice, you know what I mean? So we would say we could happily sell any of our bikes and you could use them 5-7 days a week reliably. Doesn't mean things don't go wrong sometimes. I mean, they're an electric bike, but then it's really important to have a place where you can actually go and fix it. So $1,500 up to $15,000. We sold a $15,000 mountain bike last month. A lot of people would say, well, I can buy a car for that. But I mean, a lot of just normal mountain bikes or normal road bikes are $10,000 to $15,000. So it depends what, if you're using it every day and it becomes your car, if you consider the car costs statistically $88 a week in Australia, then work out how long it's going to take to pay it off. And you don't get the health benefits and the joy of riding a bike. So.
Yeah, and this is part of it, isn't it? If you buy an e-bike, it might maybe cost you a couple of grand, but then you're not paying petrol, you're not paying for parking, you're saving all that money long term.
Yeah.
And are a lot of people finding it a bit difficult, like maybe they want an e-bike, but they just can't quite get across the purchase price? Is that
Of course, because you can buy a cheap Kmart bike for $150. You can go and buy a normal bike. We only do electric. We've always decided just to focus on that. Yes, the price point has come down a lot though. So a $1,500 bike now, 5 years ago, that bike would have retailed for $3,000. So they are coming down, and you know, it's economy of scale issue. But without a doubt, we should be looking at ways to encourage and incentivize purchase of e-bikes. Because if you think of it, actually, technically, an e-bike is classified as a vehicle within the Australian government and the Australian Taxation Office. So it's actually a vehicle, which is why you can do salary sacrificing with a few companies. So they really should be looking at some form of tax incentive, which other parts of the world have started to cotton onto that. You know, France is really big on that. Paris is big on that. Even in America, which is very car-centric, they've started to introduce that in certain states. So, you know, a tax break. So, you know, at least a fringe benefit, or you can claim on your tax bill.
Yeah, and what we've seen is some parts of the world where there is really high uptake of e-bikes, they've usually had some support, haven't they? There's been a bit of help.
Yeah, it's the combination of tax incentives, because obviously that does help and it gets it in the kind of front of mind for people. But really the main thing is infrastructure in my mind. And that's where we just need governments to fund it properly. In Canberra, there's a tradition of, I mean, per capita, I think Canberra's still number one in the country for per capita number of riders who ride bikes. And you can see why. Relatively flat, which suits normal bikes as well. But also there's infrastructure. There's plenty of places where you can avoid the traffic, and the traffic's not as bad, although let's face it, it is getting a lot worse in Canberra. So it's there. And if you build proper infrastructure, people will come and use it, you know, especially women who are more risk averse than men. You know, if you don't produce an easy way for people to go, well, I can go from home to work or commute or whatever, then no wonder people are a bit reluctant, no matter how exciting the bike or whether it's electric or not is, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So a bit of infrastructure, a bit more support, and we could probably see a lot more e-bikes replacing a lot more cars in Canberra.
We really need to, you know, as a society. I mean, you know, our vision's always been to do that from I guess, a private enterprise thing, you know, to encourage people. Have a shop where people can find these amazing bikes, get them on the bikes, they sell themselves half the time, off you go. But if we had proper infrastructure and some government support, I mean, really, the government's just, they're not unified on it. Everyone's talking about electric cars right now. That's, you know, obviously the whole industry is seeing the writing is on the wall for internal combustion and oil. So they're now transitioning. But an electric car, while it's better than a car, I mean, you know, it takes up a lot of space. It doesn't encourage exercise. It's traffic jams. It's congestion. It's not really the answer. And it's amazing how many people who we sold bikes to who just can't believe what were they doing before they had their e-bike, you know? They're like, and I often say when people come, because we've been doing this for a long time, I'm like, where have you been? Like, this is not new. This has been around for more than 10 years. But for a lot of people, it's like life-changing, truly life-changing, because they have all of a sudden freedom, and they wonder, the idea of getting in a car, for example, and going 2Ks up the road to the shopping centre, trying to find a park, going in, you know, it's like, all I needed was an e-bike with some pannier bags, and I can do it, you know. So
and suddenly it's easy. Thank you very much. That's cool. Canberra Electric Bikes. So pop on down if you're e-curious.
E-curious.
Hopefully we'll see more of these. We want more e-curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, and I'll do that because my hand's busted from mountain biking, but